I am shocked sometimes on how easily it is for me to forget things. Yesterday, I was meeting with a couple, and we come in, we're talking. I learned the woman's last name, and 3 minutes, and I really heard it. Like, I repeated it in my head, and part of it was coming at a time where I had to write her last name on a piece of paper. And it's 2 minutes later, and I'm like, as I'm approaching that line, I'm like, I forgot her last name. And I was so mortified that I was going to have to ask her 2 minutes later on what her name is again. You know what's also easy for me to forget? That God's always with me, that I'm loved. Over and over and over again in the scriptures, and part of being human is that we cry out, and there's a lament like, I feel forsaken. I've been forgotten by God. I'm alone. I'm not loved. I've been abandoned. What was Jesus' words on the cross that we'll hear coming up? Why have you forsaken me? We have the infamous first reading today with the worshiping the golden calf when Moses is up on the mountain, and our psalm is a great summary. Just a couple verses. Psalm 106 is a summary of the first reading. And what was the refrain of our response to our psalm? Remember us, O Lord, as you favor your people. What's the reality? God never forgets us, but we forget him. And here it's, remember us, O Lord, as you favor your people. We don't hear it in the few verses we get in a response for our psalm, but verse 13 says, they soon forgot. They forgot. They had no patience for his plan. So when they're under there at the base of the mountain, they've lost the patience for his plan. And then it says in verse 13, they gave into their cravings. Sometimes my mind always goes back to as a kid watching the Ten Commandments, the movie with Charlton Heston, and you just see the chaos there at the bottom of the mountain. But that verse there, they gave into their cravings. What were their cravings? To be loved, like to worship. Their craving, as every human heart, it's to be led. And so God has forgotten us. We've been abandoned. Yeah, we just went through the Red Sea, but he has left us. It's been 40 days. And so they gave into their cravings. What are their cravings? It's, I want to be led. I want love. And so they build this silly golden calf. As we looked at a couple weeks ago with the woman at the well, every time we sin, what do? We're forgetting God. We're giving to our cravings at a lower level. Remember the quote, every man who knocks on the door of a brothel is seeking God. And so, the other summary of this in the psalm is, then he spoke of exterminating them, but what? But Moses, his chosen one, withstood him into the breach to turn back his destructive wrath. So if it's easy for us to forget God, who are here on a Sunday or Thursday morning, now go on those that aren't connected into a faith community, those that we're to reach, those that God wants to reach. Think of with how shiny, the number of shiny things that there are. What's the gospel say? Who was John? He was a light, pointing to him, pointing to Jesus, pointing to his face, the one who is the ultimate satisfying of our cravings. And so what we need is we need more Moseses. We need more John the Baptist. You and I need to be more of a Moses than John the Baptist. Pope Benedict, the quote from Pope Benedict says let your light shine in our society and political and economic life, in culture and research, even if it is only a flicker amid so many deceptive lights, it nonetheless draws its power and splendor from the great morning star, the risen Christ. Even if our light is a small flicker in the midst of all the other deceptive lights in the world today, even that small flicker that we are has power in it, because it is the power and splendor of the risen Christ, which everyone is looking for, which is the craving of every human heart. And so, I don't know, I'm just thinking, that's why it's all the more important for us at the end of the day to do and examine, where was the Lord at work in my life today? Why is that so important? Why did St. Ignatius say, as he's building his community, if you don't do anything at all in the spiritual life, you're only to do one thing, do your examine at the end of the night. Where was God at work in my life today? Because it's so easy for us to forget. It's so easy for us not to see it. And then we can pose that question to family members, to neighbors, to the world that has all these deceptive lights. And we can be that little flicker to point to him